Browns also need running backs. This is a deep running back draft.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the third, fourth round range, who are some guys you think fit in that range with what the Browns need?
Yeah, I look at a guy like Dylan Sampson from the Tennessee Volunteers, who I think gives you a lot of speed. I think he's getting underrated in this class because there's a couple of guys that just, I don't know, have a little bit more height, maybe played at bigger programs. But, that's somebody that I think is fantastic. I think that he's got that home run ability to him. I think that he's, right there with some of the most impactful running backs that we saw in the college football season. I think two of the Ohio State guys as well, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, if they're there in the third round, I think Travion's probably raised his stock a little bit more. It feels like he's going to be more of a second-round pick, but, you could have a guy like Quinshon Judkins, fall into your lap in the third, fourth round, something like that. It's probably more the third now that we've seen that national championship run. But, man, it's just a handful of other players as well that that you can get and I think be pretty successful for you. Jaden Blue is a speedster from Texas who I think was really able to emerge this past season. You get even further down the line, you get a guy like, Jaquavius Marks, who played at Mississippi State and then USC, or a Marcus Yarns, who was at the Senior Bowl. He was somebody who played at Delaware and is a great receiving back. I wouldn't be worried about running back at all whatsoever. Really, the question is, with running back for the Cleveland Browns, do you want to draft one at the top of the second round? Because if you don't, then there's plenty other guys that you can get a little bit later. But do you think a guy like a Caleb Johnson from Iowa or an Omarion Hampton, if he is there from North Carolina, do those guys intrigue you enough at the top of the second round to take one? Because if not, I do think there's going to be a lot of running backs to choose from later in the draft.
What about tackles? That's another one that kind of is kind of a need.
Yeah.
If DeJuan Jones is healthy and Conklin can play, there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, and it goes back to sort of the conversation that you were having before, where if you want a starting caliber offensive tackle in this league, you basically have to draft one. Again, teams just don't let starting caliber offensive tackles hit the pro market, hit the trading block, anything like that. It's just very rare that that's the case. So, with them picking at number 2, there's not really an offensive tackle that you would think about there at number 2. But, the top of the second round, I think that there's a lot of guys that could potentially make it there. I look at a guy like Josh Simmons from Ohio State. He went through the knee injury, but, man, did he look good before he got hurt there. I think he's somebody that you'd factor in. The other Texas offensive tackle, Cam Williams, big dude, strong dude, moves super well, great length. Now, he needs a little polishing, right? I think that he needs to really fix things, especially a lot of the holding penalties that he had this past year. But he's somebody who's very intriguing. Maybe a Charles Grant, somebody who played at William and Mary, back-to-back FCS offensive tackle, or All-American offensive tackle, I should say. I think that he could put on a show here with how well he moves for a guy who's 6'5", 300 pounds. These are a couple of examples that players that come to my mind. Ozzie Trapillo is somebody who, now that I'm thinking about it, I think he is just a steady Eddie offensive tackle, where he might not be like a franchise caliber offensive tackle, but somebody that you put on the right side of the line of scrimmage and you really don't have to think too much about because he plays such a high floor brand of football. So those are a handful of names that I think about for the Browns.
The other one that I would say is wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy had a real nice year. He's probably established himself as number 1, but there's a lot of question marks behind that. Is there a guy that you can get in the third round that's kind of a playmaker?
Yeah, I like, for this team specifically, I like a guy like Alec Iomaner, and he is somebody from Stanford who I think he's a bigger, more X type of a wide receiver, but he's got a great track background to him, so he gives you a little bit more when it comes to that vertical ability. I like Charles Tillman and what he can be for the Cleveland Browns, but getting another big-bodied wide receiver I think makes a lot of sense for them. You get a couple of guys that are separation studs like Tez Johnson from Oregon, Xavier Estrepo from Miami. These players who are more slot-specific players. If you feel good about Jerry Jeudy being moved around the formation as more of that flanker type of outside receiver, then you could draft maybe somebody who's a little bit more of a slot stud for you. So there's all sorts of different shapes and sizes with wide receivers. Wide receiver is always decently deep every single year, and I think this year is another one.